Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. New video. This one is going to be focused on making a jump from heroic to master. This is really for those that are new to the game and as well focused on making that progression jump of going, okay, well, I'm getting through heroic. What is a good point in time to then go on to master and try and get that done? A few tips and tricks when it comes to strategy and as well some champions that do really help out with making a jump as well. I actually did a video that was similar to this in the past about 3 years ago, which was called how to make the jump up from heroic to master, but a few things have changed the way I edit, not to mention the fact of information on nodes, interactions, and some new champions which really do help out with this, not to mention strategy. Now, making the jump up to master is not an easy one, especially if you don't have a diverse 3 and maybe 4-star roster. You may have the first inklings of your 5-star roster coming in, and it won't be a case that you'll have access to a whole amount of these 5-star champions. So it's fair to say your roster may look a little bit like this, and I will go through a lot of champions which are really effective to then invest in very early on, and also some synergization groups which do go together quite nicely. Now, where you are in the game will probably be in this section for mastery development. Try and put in as much effort to grab several mastery points in certain key areas. Whether or not, first of all, it's in your proficiencies, and whether or not you want to increase the length of your stun from a parry, you'll largely start off with parry and then you'll go along. You can even do things like petrify and as well stupefy if you want to keep yourself in that stun parry for longer, and as well interact with things like the healing ability of enemies. Which the petrify mastery does interact well with power and regeneration. And also make sure to unlock your dexterity if you haven't already. Do make sure to practice your parries and timing. If you don't get it right, it's fine. Just look out for when the fist, hammer, or other items are flying towards you, and make sure you're putting down right at the last minute that kind of blocks the tap on the screen, and then you're just trying to get that parry all the time. But the astute among you will notice something, and that is that staying in the block, I am losing a lot of health, which does make it very difficult for any decent progression. So this is when there's going to be some certain champions that are going to help out, or your playstyle would have to change. This will be largely about you and what you can do. Are you good at intercepting? Are you good at special evading and going back in? Are you more cautious in staying in the blocks? And is your device not, say, one of the best out there, and as well internet connection? Because there are some other variables that you've got to consider. But we will go over in a moment some very very forgiving champions that will help you out, from high block proficiencies right the way through to regeneration, which is so important nowadays. But obviously one of these champions that forgives quite well is Scarlet Witch. One of the newest champions that I really like and is effective for this particular difficulty is Hulkbuster. Now, you just saw with Hulkbuster then that I decided to hit the enemy whilst it was blocked. And that's one great feature about this champion. As soon as you hit an SP1 to a blocked champion, he is able to put in a good amount of damage. And as well a stun, which is great. Unblockable SP1, fantastic. And one of the things is, again, you want to avoid, which I did then, is hitting into your own block, because it ain't good. It ain't good. So swiping away, dexterity away is always very effective to doing some stuff. One of the forgiving champions has got to be Cap America Infinity War. It's a great champion to invest in. As you can see, damage through the block isn't as excessive. And it's easy with this one. If you are one of those very cautious new players, then that's fine. You will find your feet, I promise. But staying into the block, building up your kinetic charge, well-timed blocks are always very important to then damage output a lot. If you want to do a debuff damage from a bleed, SP1, you can watch the health melt off the enemy. Or, which is the main way of playing with the champion, is all about throwing the SP2, going into a heavy attack and then throwing an SP2 midway through. But this is one of the great champions because it's able to take a lot of damage, a lot of punishment in the block. And that's the thing, when making that jump up, you might want to be a bit more cautious. So staying in the block with a very block proficient high champion will give you that time to, when the enemy throws a heavy attack, then you can swipe back and then regain your footing and then hit out when it's appropriate to do so, or when you feel comfortable to do so as well. So here's another example, staying in the block first and foremost. We are taking a good amount of damage, and with this one, because we're going against a domino, it has critical failure, so she's going to be doing some damage on us. So we will still try and, still cautious like I'm doing now, thumbs down on the block, we're trying to see about taking some damage. We're kinetically charged, but we can't stay in the block forever because it won't be good for our... Okay, so here's another example with Cap Infinity War. We're going to go a few kind of like blocks, and then we get Petrify, which is always very handy when that pops up. That's if we have a tech champion on our team. That's part of the ability of Captain America Infinity War. I would suggest as well, if you get it awakened, invest in it. Put a lot of signatures into that champion. It will be an absolute godsend. As you can see, SP1 thrown by the enemy, then we swipe back in again. And it's just a case of watching the timing, watching the enemy as much as possible. And this is month in, month out. This is not about this month, it's all about other months as well. We throw an SP1, we did a heavy attack and then an SP1, because we don't need to throw the SP2. But if you had the 3-star version, maybe it was best to go into a heavy attack, parry, heavy attack, and then whilst mid-heavy attack, throwing that special 2 and doing a lot of damage. Okay, so what champions would I recommend to invest in, especially when you're considering of doing that difficulty or making that step up? Well, as I said, high block proficiency champions are always effective. Red Guardian is one of them, has amazing block proficiency, especially with that shield. Not to mention throwing an SP2 will do a lot of debuff damage. Throw an SP1 for the slow debuff, but still a very effective champion. Dr. Doom is amazing with block proficiency. Not to mention he's an amazing power control with throwing his SP1, nullifying effects, and also doing stagger from doing the slap motion. So you hit into the enemy, gets a shock, you then click down for a heavy attack and you're able to stun the enemy. Oh, and do the SP2 for a nice amount of incinerate damage. The same with Captain America World War II. And as we saw a moment ago, Captain America Infinity War with that amazing block proficiency. But there are actually 16 other champions that will really help you out with making that progression from heroic to master based on abilities and maybe some synergization. So let's have a look at them. Majik for that nullifying, power lock and power stealing. Nick Fury for his bleeds, his furies, and the ability when awakened to come back from the dead. Who doesn't love that? Vision Age of Ultron for hill blocking and power control. Colossus for his quadruple immunity, not to mention doing parries and heavies and smashing in with a massive SP2 for maximum damage. Venom for his buff generation and, well, just he's got the full package, bleeds as well. Hawkeye for bleeds and power control from the special attack 1. A combination team with Black Bolt, Hit Monkey and Medusa. By the way, this is the synergy team here. Critical rating increased by 300 for each buff on Black Bolt. And let's face it, with the Medusa synergy, he gets a lot of buffs. Mr. Corvus Glaive with his persistent cruelty, which basically means his damage is going to be loads of crit and do lots of damage and also save him from death, which is great and handy when he's awakened, obviously. Hyperion with his parries, then heavy attacks, getting all those fury buffs, and able to put in some massive amount of damage. Amazing when he's awakened, but still relatively good when unawakened. He can gain a lot of power quickly and do a lot of special attacks. Next up is Blade, very forgiving for regeneration. If you make a mistake, you're able to regen very well. Not to mention, throw some bleed effects from SP1s on the enemy. Parries, it does bleed on the enemy, allows you to gain power. Power can be absorbed for regeneration. It's a perfect champion for those really learning to play the game. Old Man Logan, but with the Sabretooth synergy, because he's able to get more regeneration up and they kind of work well together. So I think it's always a good pair up, Old Man Logan and Sabretooth on a team. Sticking with the mutants, X-23 has regeneration, bleeds and cruelty. All things that are really good for doing damage output, but also being forgiven with that regeneration. Next up is Scarlet Witch. As we saw in action, she's a complete powerhouse doing things from power locks, poisons, not to mention heal blocks, getting fury, cruelty, regeneration, smashing in with lots of damage, and her Veil of Fortune. Get a load of signatures into that and she won't let you down. She's a complete powerhouse. Getting back to Wolverine, a very good learning champion because you're able to do bleeds and have regeneration. I would recommend, if you want to build a load of regeneration back, is to gather lots of power, so 3 bars, and watch your regeneration just come up just right up to 100% very, very quickly. It's up to you if you want to throw specials, but it's just a really good champion for having that forgiving nature, especially if you are low on health when you're battling around. And the final champion is Warlock. This is a great champion awakened, a good champion unawakened. For the awakened ability, you just put degeneration on the enemy that you're going up against, and I am considering awakening my 5-star one. But you've got power draining, you've got power burning, you've got the virus which stops healing abilities, and it's just an all-round great champion. SP3 for regeneration. Man, it's a complete powerhouse. Great champion to have on your roster, and as well being several immunities, another quadruple immunity. There we go, that has been a video as well as some new champions in the current meta that are really effective against this. Hulkbuster as well, which I forgot to mention, is a great champion because you're able to do SP1s and do stuns into enemies, even better when they're blocked because it's unblockable and you hit right on through, and it's very, very nice. Do loads of heavy attacks in order to maximize shocks on the enemy, but still you're gonna have to make a decision of how you are going to play the game. If your device isn't very good, I think it's always best to concentrate on the holding nature. So when you're clicking down for a block, so you've got your thumb down for a block, and then you're able to then watch the enemy, and when they do that thing where they block break you, or they try and like do an uppercut, or they try and do a maneuver to then hit you out of that block, is then a case you have to swipe back. So work on that timing. Once you've got that down and locked down and you're fine, then look at parries and making sure that you're utilizing hitting into the enemy, and practice as well swiping away at the right time. That will be one way to get through into this, but if you're finding that your 3 stars and 4 stars aren't strong enough to take on the content, then you'll have to work more on your intercepting, or maybe finding champions with high block proficiency, which we mentioned in the first part of that champions section as well. So try those things out, and also make sure to look into intercepting, where you're able to counter the enemy as they go towards you. But primarily, I think the block proficiency thing is a good thing to start off with. And those strong champions like Dr. Doom, Red Guardian, Cap Infinity War, Cap World War II, and so many others are really good to focus on to then hold up play and making sure you're not taking too much damage through your block. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please hit the like button. Also, check out some recent content here, and also in the far left-hand corner, I'll put the new Player's Guide playlist, or maybe a video from it, so you can go and check out some guides for newer players to the game, which I will be focusing a lot more in the coming weeks and months. Also, check out some other stuff down there, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.